Greetings, everybody, and welcome once more to the Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive back into the world of darkness? I hope you're ready to join me. This night calls. Today, we're going to be talking about a sub-tribe, a unique individual group that is technically descended from other tribes of werewolves, but is something on their own. The Siberakh. Something that has virtually no contact with the Garu Nation. So if you're ready to dive into it, I will be your host and guide today. Dracovin. I can lead you through the gateway, through the gauntlet, to the world of darkness. Please do give me a little tip before like the video over on the YouTube side of things. And of course, subscribe. And let me know if you would use any adventures for the Siberakh in your stories. One specifically based around them. Something different. You're thinking. Shall we go then? The world of darkness awaits us. We've arrived. So, the problem with Siberakh is we don't have a lot of information on them outside of the older editions. By W20 or beyond, they're not really talked about. They are technically both related to two other groups, and this might be why. And they are very unique as they are outsiders. You don't easily tell a story about them. You tell a story about them on their own most of the time. But from what information we can glean, there are 4 books. And I would recommend these 4 books. It's my main sources. Of course, the 2 in the bottom here, the 2 Silverfangs tribe books, that's because one of their main people they're descended from are Silverfangs. Also, in this pile of books that we have here, Rage Across Russia. And of course, the Player's Guide to Garu, may I note, that is the revised edition. So keep that in mind, the revised edition Player's Guide to Garu has a good section on it. Okay. And let's dive into it, though. Let's begin. Siberakh. I'm probably mispronouncing that name. And the thing is, the reason I'm mispronouncing it is, from what we can tell, the origin of the name from back in the early 90s when these were introduced is probably a mistake. It seems to mispronounce from a mispronunciation of Siberakh. I'm probably butchering this, though, but it's Russian, and the one from Siberia is what it's supposed to mean. But it's a mispronunciation, and, it's, again, early 90s werewolf and World of Darkness. They weren't trying their hardest to be very good to these places. Regardless, though, we have them introduced. Rage Against Russia. They're also known as the Outsiders. And they are Russian, but they're also a sub-tribe of Garu that really doesn't have contact with the Garu Nation for a number of reasons, and we'll dive into it today. Their totem is the Sable. So these are descendants of Silverfangs, and they ended up basically connecting up with Wendigo. It's thought that the most because again, we can't get metis, it's basically a bunch of Silverfangs, basically, rather than doing the various inbreeding blood purity that they had, basically chose to end up with those descendants of Wendigo, their kinfolk. And this connection through Wendigo kinfolk, which both Wendigo and Silverfangs acknowledge, is their origin in a lot of ways. And it's kind of their history in a lot of ways, because we don't have a lot about them. We know that they are these descendants from these 2 bloodlines, and they somehow combine the best of both worlds in a lot of ways, with a kind of purity that doesn't exist in the Garu Nation. This is really the only image that we have of one on a Rage card. Rage being the werewolf-based card game when Vampire the Masquerade had their card game too, Vampire the Eternal Struggle. The Rage werewolf game also exists. So what do we know about the Siberakh? Again, I'm probably butchering this, but I'm basing it on the appearance of the word and pronunciation that's probably wrong. They live in the wilds of Siberia. They're unknown to most Garu. Basically, the only two groups that are truly aware of them are Wendigo and Silverfangs. Silverfangs look at them in this very interesting way, because they are perhaps not really important to them, but also are important to them. They're a dirty little secret. Because remember, purity is a big part of Silverfangs. And they ended up with Wendigo stock. So, in a lot of ways, they treat them as Ronin for them. Outsiders. They're also beings that are not connected with Gara politics. And both Silverfangs and Wendigo respect that, the fact that they are just not there. You know, they don't mention them. They basically feel like they're going to reflect badly. The Wendigo, on the other hand, respect them a little bit more. It's an interesting thing, because the Wendigo are like, oh, hey, you kind of ended up with our stock, which is kind of weird because you're cousins to us then. Like, your ancestors, you know, okay, cool, you moved in, you know, kind of did some things there, whatever. But they understand the Siberakh's desired retreat from tribal politics to basically keep themselves safe and secret. Other tribes do sometimes hear rumors of them, but they're seen in a very weird place. Those outsider tribes basically are like, hey, maybe this bloodline could restore the Silverfangs. They could basically have the great virtues of the ancient Silverfangs, the nobility, the bravery, those kind of things. But they also have the, basically, invigoration of Wendigo deep within them. That they could be the best tribe to basically take over control over Russia. They could lead them in the battle against the Worm. Is this true at all? Hard to say. On the other hand, there's also this kind of like bit of legend amongst the Siberakh, or amongst the others outside of there, that perhaps that this ice pack, this pack there of blood lineage has basically, there was a miraculous, you know, connection with a spirit that basically connected with a kinfolk wolf. And this spirit gave birth to a Garu of amazing blessings, which leads the pack of the Siberakh. That their leaders are basically children of ancestor spirits. Yeah, there's interesting legends in amongst them. So yes, the Siberakh are also seen as pure ones in a lot of ways, which is very interesting because they're pure ones from Siberia, not the New World, where the connection would be very different. The Siberakh is also seen that they may basically, it's rumored in amongst some of the Silverfangs that they wander the Umbra, that they connect to the other, that they had connected with the other American tribes, basically during with the Barren Strait before it collapsed. And that they basically keep themselves now out of the connections with a lot of the umbral places, the cairns that they guard. That, again, there's always this idea that when the final stand comes, the Ronin Siberakh will come to their aid then, will fight for them then. That is when they will pick up the sword, that they protect their own homeland. But when the time is right, they can come out and fight for it. This kind of comes down to a lot also that you could adventure with Siberakh. The thing is, if you're doing Siberakh, you're probably just doing a Siberakh adventure. You're doing a chronicle related to them because they are so separate. They are to themselves. They are their own thing. So you could tell interesting stories about them, but they're just going to be, you know, like the Siberian wilds, surviving in those areas, facing dangerous and wild things, being very primeval in a modern world, and a lot of classical mythology kind of adventures. It'd be interesting to do, and that is something that the books do talk about possibly doing. So yeah, there's the Siberakh. Is there a lot about them? No, not at all. Is there a possibility of playing them? Sure. Again, telling a story of them, basically telling a story of Siberia, of these ancient people deep within that region, would be very interesting. Telling it that they'd be outside of there. There really isn't a good reason for the Siberakh to leave their region. They want nothing to do with the outside world. They still worship Gaia, they still believe in protecting and fighting for her. But the thing is, until they hear that call for a need to leave their region, which would be a call to the Great War, there is no reason to go. And even if we take some of the things that happen in W20 and 5th edition as possibly happening, with 5th edition as the kind of falling apart of a lot of it, this subgroup of Garu that only live deep in these areas here are very interesting. Basically, they are, in a lot of ways, both biological and cultural, because they live in this region and they're only born in this region and they only teach people in this region. So it's kind of one of those things that W5 walks away from, which could still exist in that thing if you want to take that stuff at face value. It's an interesting thing. And the fact is, they basically, unless the war comes to them, they don't want anything. And their cairns don't have any moon bridges. Finding them, discovering the Siberakh could also be part of an adventure, but you have to maybe connect up with them for some kind of reason. And your quest could lead you to them and discovering them in a massive wilderness where they don't have numbers. They are a small group that lives in Siberia and ekes out a living. Probably more Lupin than hominid, but there are people that live there that might be kinfolk too. More than just the wolves that live up in Siberia. And these interesting stories could be something you could tell. And I think that's why talking about these subgroups, which are fascinating in and of themselves, which don't get a lot of talk about after here, and I understand why they aren't compelling for a lot of stories. They're very specific for the stories that you would tell with them. But still, nonetheless, they're interesting to talk about. And I hope you enjoyed learning about them with me today. So that is where we'll leave it today, and I hope you can join me again when I talk about more tabletop, whether it's World of Darkness or something else. I usually talk about all my tabletop stuff. I record it live over on the Twitch side of things if you just want to join me over there, but I do upload all my Twitch-related tabletop content over on the YouTube side of things, so you can always catch it there if you can. If you're on YouTube, hey, that subscription, comments, all that kind of things would be great. Engagement always helps. Other things I do on Twitch are some gaming, chatting, all kinds of things, live plays, discussing tabletop, my kind of talk show, Saturdays at 6, current live play being 5 as well, Wednesdays at 8. All the tabletop stuff, that's what gets uploaded on YouTube. All the other stuff, I'll make a VOD chat eventually. Anyway, until the next time we dive in the World of Darkness or something else tabletop related, check out my social media, and I will, for just updates and stuff. And I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.